Funding for Market Journal is provided by the Nebraska Soybean Board and the Nebraska Corn Board.
Growing more with less is the mantra of Nebraska's corn farmers, and they're using incredible technology to do it. Soil moisture monitors let them know when their crop needs water and how much. GPS systems eliminate overlaps in the field, saving fuel and money. New hybrids reduce the use of pesticides and increase yields. When you're talking new technology and innovation, Nebraska corn farmers are all ears. Nebraska's family corn farmers, sustaining innovation.
Market Journal, television for agricultural business decisions, is a presentation of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources. Promotional support is provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine, and major funding for Market Journal is provided by the Nebraska Corn Board and the Nebraska Soybean Board.
Welcome to this week's edition of Market Journal. I'm Jeff Wilkerson. On this episode, Roy Smith looks at corn and soybean markets. Ron Plain analyzes the current inventory of hogs and pigs. Richard Randall talks about preparing for calving. And Lowell Sandell discusses controlling water hemp. Roy Smith is our grain market analyst this week. In 2013, U.S. farmers harvested 13.9 billion bushels of corn, more than any other year in the past. The top mark in soybean production was reached in 2009 when growers reaped nearly 3.4 billion bushels. On Monday, the USDA will release its final totals from the 2014 harvest. If previous estimates hold, those numbers will easily set new highs in both corn and soybeans. Ahead of next week's report, we talked with Roy Wednesday afternoon to get his thoughts on corn and soybean markets. Tell me how corn and soybean markets have entered 2015.
It's always interesting around the end of the previous year and the beginning of the new year when a lot of the traders are maybe taking a little bit of vacation and the trading is a little thin, and so we get some sort of wild moves that you wouldn't expect just based on supply and demand, and we certainly have had that. Monday this week we had beans 70 cents higher, beans 37 cents higher, I guess it was, and corn had a relatively good day. It wasn't anywhere nearly that good, but it's kind of encouraging that with a huge crop that everybody says is out there and stacks of corn in some cases piled on the ground at elevators, and yet those elevators are moving that corn and being able to keep the bid up there, and so I say it's pretty encouraging in general.
Update me on where basis is around this area.
Basis just has varied so much. If you look at the bid offer, the bids on the local elevators, they've held in there, maybe improved a little bit, but every once in a while we'll hear stories about one of the processors really needing some corn pretty bad, and he's willing to bid just about anything to get it. And that's a real opportunity for farmers who can actually deliver to these processors.
You've been updating your May soybean charts. Tell me why that's important because of what it shows.
Well, the long-term soybean charts are pretty much what I go on when I make decisions in terms of making sales. I also trade a little spec account that kind of helps me keep me on track to see if there's anything unusual coming, and I'd say it's very encouraging this year for a couple of reasons. One of them is that I compare the most recent 5 years to the previous 20 years, and those two charts look almost identical. In other words, if you go back to the early 2000s, we saw quite a change in the soybean market as beans coming from South America weren't as much competition as most people thought they would be. The other thing is that I do buy and sell on a small spec account just to be able to track how the seasonal price trends have done. And in 2014 they did extremely well, better than I would have ever hoped, just buying when the trend is up and selling when the trend is down.
You were also updating your charts for the dead cat bounce of 2014. Tell me about that.
Right, the dead cat bounce in 2014, and this is on my website, by the way, soyroy.com. Anybody can go on the website and look at it. It tracked almost perfect with what we expect in the dead cat bounce. The harvest low on the average runs October 2nd. This year it was September 26th, so that's like 4 or 5 trading days. You can't get much better than that when it comes to commodities. We saw the dead cat bounce come right out of that harvest low, and the dead cat bounce was last year was good for about $1.50 a bushel. So people who followed that dead cat bounce and pulled the trigger at the appropriate time made some pretty good money just by some short-term storage. And maybe it's going to go up to $15, I don't know. But I do know that it's worth $1.50 more than it was when we started harvest, and I'm willing to take that and say thank you.
These two charts that we've been talking about, does it give you any indication of what you should do if you still have some old crop corn or beans left in the bin?
It really does. You can use those charts for a variety of things, and one of the things that you can do is you look at your situation now with old crop, for instance, with old crop corn in the bin, which these are, and basically they say if you haven't sold already, no point selling now. You just as well stay with it through at least through the end of March. Is there any guarantee on the fact that the charts are going to work this time? Well, no, there's no guarantee. But if you look historically at the dead cat bounce and how reliable that's been, you have to think that those other charts are probably pretty good as well. And they're a good tool. You know, I keep saying there's no guarantee, but if you're looking for something that's going to be helpful in helping you make a decision when to sell and how much to sell, they're as good as anything I've seen.
The USDA's January crop report is scheduled for release Monday at 11 a.m. Central Time. Jeff Peterson from Heartland Farm Partners will join us next week to analyze those numbers. We also have a look at hog markets this week from University of Missouri Extension economist Ron Plain. According to the USDA's latest count, there were 66.1 million head of hogs and pigs in the U.S. on December 1st. That's up 2% from a year ago. The agency's quarterly inventories could provide a glimpse into losses from the porcine epidemic diarrhea virus, a problem that could become harder to control. Reuters reported Monday researchers have identified a third strain of PEDV, the latest in Minnesota. November's slaughter numbers showed pork production at nearly 1.9 billion pounds, down 7% from the previous year, with the total number of hogs slaughtered down 9%. We talked with Ron Tuesday and began by asking for his thoughts on the current inventory of hogs and pigs in this country.
USDA's December survey said we got more hogs than a year ago. Breeding herd up 4% compared to a year ago. Market hog inventory up 2%. That was in line with what we were expecting. 2014 was a very profitable year for hog farmers, and like other farmers, can't stand prosperity, so they're planning on raising more hogs.
That total inventory, is that an indication that farmers are intending to increase the herd?
Yeah, the fact that the breeding herd is up 4% and market hogs numbers up 2% indicates expansion's coming. USDA is saying about 4% more sows will farrow this winter than a year ago, 3% or so more in the spring. So yes, it's a response to profits and desire to produce more hogs.
The average pig saved per litter from September to November was 10.23. That's the record. That blows my mind, Ron. Should it?
Well, the long-term trend is about 2% more pigs per litter per year. That's the trend. For the last several quarters we've been down sharply, as much as 5.5% compared to a year ago, because of all the death loss from the PED virus. But death loss this summer was less. PED looks like more of a winter problem for baby pigs than a summer problem. So yes, it's a bit surprising, but not totally astounding.
November pork production down 7% total pounds, 9% in total head. Why was that?
Well, PED. Pigs go to slaughter at 6 months of age, so if you back off from that back into late winter, spring, when those pigs were being farrowed, very high death loss due to PED, and so 6 months later, they're not available to slaughter.
What do you expect supplies to be like in 2015?
Well, if USDA's survey numbers are close to right, we should have somewhere between 4 and 5% more hogs to slaughter this year than last year. Weights have been very heavy. We were up 8.5 pounds on the average live weight of hogs slaughtered in 2014 compared to the year ago. We're hoping to see that moderate some, but we could well be up 5 to 5.5% in pork production here in 2015 compared to last year.
Let's talk about marketing. December was not kind. What led to that huge slide?
Well, again, PED is a big part of it. It really looks like we're losing lots of pigs. We know we did last winter, not nearly so many during the summer to PED. And those pigs that didn't die last summer showed up in packing plants here this winter. And it looks like that may be the case going forward. It looks like PED death loss is picking up as we've moved into winter again and could well moderate next summer. So we could see a big seasonal swings in both slaughter and prices ahead of us.
2014 exports and into 2015, what does that look like, Ron?
Well, as you might expect with record high hog prices and pork cutout value, exports are kind of softening. The dollar has really strengthened in recent weeks. That's also bad news for exports. So our expectation is the amount of pork we're going to export in 2015 may be up a bit because we're going to produce more, but no big increase, and don't be surprised if it might soften a little bit here in the year ahead.
We talked about prices. Where are current break-evens at, Ron?
Well, on a live weight basis, somewhere in the low 50s, 52, 53 cents a pound. On a carcass weight basis, that works out into the high 60s, close to 70 cents per pound of carcass.
Does that leave enough meat on the bone for a profitable 2015?
Oh, it looks like it will. If you plug in the futures prices for corn, soybean meals, and hogs, it looks like, yes, we're going to make some money in the year ahead, but not near as much as hog producers made in 2014.
The USDA will release average meat prices for the month of December on Friday. The next quarterly Hogs and Pigs report is scheduled for March 27th. The January Nebraska farmer says Brad Williams knows how to test new products and practices on his farm near Morse Bluff. He's conducted on-farm research for 10 years, and he tells why in this month's issue. He also knows how to set up those trials using field-length strips to compare fertilizer rates and plant populations and to determine the economics of inputs, such as fungicide applications. Williams says we have to continually keep improving by testing new products and practices, not just to see if they improve yield, but also determine if they're worth it economically. Williams also takes part in the Nebraska On-Farm Research Network and shares results with other crop producers. You can read more in the January Nebraska Farmer about his experiences and about the Nebraska On-Farm Research Network. Nebraska Extension beef veterinarian Richard Randall says it's already time to start thinking about calving. We talked with Richard earlier this week about how farmers and ranchers can begin to plan for the upcoming season.
Well, even though we're 30 to 80 days, 90 days away from calving, when we start thinking about that, there's two questions I like to have people ask themselves. Are your cows ready for calving, and are you ready for calving? From a cow standpoint, obviously, now is a good time to be checking in on that nutritional status of those cows. It takes work to have a calf, and cows that are undernourished tend to lengthen their labor time. Calves tend to be weaker and all of those types of things. So good body condition at this point, or if they're thin, bumping that nutrition between now and calving is an important part of that.
What specific score would you like them to be in, or what health status would you like them to be in before calving? We
generally talk about adult mature cows being in a body condition score of 5 on a 1 to 9 scale at calving time. Heifers a little extra condition because they're going to need that. They're still growing. Something like a 6 at calving time. I think it's just as important that those cows are all on a positive plane of nutrition at calving time. So They might be a little under condition, but if they're in a gaining phase, then that tends to counteract some problems that we see.
Outside of the animal, what should the farmer or rancher be doing to maybe get the environment ready?
Well, certainly want to be looking at facilities in case you need to assist a cow, have a good place to get out of extremely inclement weather. That provides safety for you and the cow, and we just know things go better when you're not in a hurry. It's a good idea to go through all of your obstetrical equipment, make sure that it's working properly, clean and ready. In fact, we often suggest that you basically put a kit together that's in a toolbox or what have you that has obstetrical chains or handles and the types of things that you'd expect that you'd need during assisting a cow, and having all that ready to go.
You said a warm box is something that people might want to consider in situations where it's either colder or wetter?
Yeah, certainly, you know, if we're in about an extremely cold weather, those calves, they have brown fat like most infants that is there to help them, but that's for a short period of time, and so we can run into problems with frostbite or getting those calves chilled, and when they do that, then they're slow to nurse and take colostrum and absorb colostrum and all those things. So especially when that weather's really bad and you have that calf there, you need to make sure he gets dry and warm as quickly as possible.
This week was not a pleasant week to be outside. If there's sustained cold, we touched on this last year, but if there's sustained cold, what relationship can that have to the calf during the process?
Yeah, it's been kind of interesting. Over the years, they talked about, and there is some work that shows that during extended bouts of extreme cold weather, calves tend to be a little bit larger when they're born. Thought is that in that cold weather, you're going to redirect blood flow to the core body to help keep warm, and in doing that you increase blood flow to the internal organs including the calf, and that increases nutrients, so you might see a slightly larger calf. So, and there is some work that does support that. What it means is I don't know that we've had enough extended extreme cold this year yet, but if it continues like we're currently going, it just means watching a little extra close just to make sure, especially on those heifers, that they're not going to be having a problem from an oversized calf.
Okay, finally, the last thing you say, you'd like people to develop a protocol. What should all be in that protocol?
Well, I think the best thing to do is especially with hired hands and what have you, just review, think briefly about what normal calving is like, so you have some kind of indication of when it's appropriate to intervene. The quicker that you intervene when it's appropriate, then the less the likelihood of having either problems with the calf or problems with the cow, and that leads to potential problems breeding back and all of those things. So we often talk about once those animals are in true labor, giving them a couple of hours to do it on their own and then check to see if they need assistance. I like to kind of go with the rule of thumb that I'd like to see continual progress. So if I see an animal that's got a foot out, indication that they're in true labor, I check back with them in 30 minutes, and if nothing's changed, then it might be time to check. So you know, the quicker you can assist when it's needed without being too quick, that's better on the cow and the calf.
Next week, we'll talk about the advantages to calves born in the first 21 days of calving season with Nebraska Extension educator Steve Tunn. This past summer, we reported on herbicide resistance in weeds from a field day near Fremont. We told you then Nebraska had 8 weed species resistant to at least one herbicide, with 5 weeds having resistance to glyphosate. The state has now 6 with the addition of common ragweed. One of the challenging weeds Nebraska growers have wrestled with is water hemp. At the recent Nebraska Soybean Day and Machinery Expo, we discussed field trial results aimed at controlling the weed with Lowell Sandell. Formerly of Nebraska Extension, Lowell currently works with Valent, but updated farmers at the event about his earlier research.
So the soybean board has funded our project on doing grower education and research around resistant weeds for the last 3 years. And we've been at the Fremont site for 2 years, and we're up here at the Soybean Expo talking about some of the results from our Waterhemp site here.
What were the things that you looked at this site here?
So one of the things I think is most pertinent to growers is our pre followed by post program system or trial that we looked at. And the good news on this is we proved through this that a very solid pre-emergence program followed by a diversified post that includes more than just glyphosate can provide really good control of glyphosate-resistant water hemp and maintain producer yields at the levels that they need to be.
How widespread was water hemp last year in Nebraska fields?
You know, we confirmed this 3 or 4 years ago in Nebraska, and it's been prevalent here in the eastern part of the state. As we drove around through the growing season, it seemed like there were more problems popping up in the central and south central part of the state with both water hemp and some Palmer amaranth issues out there. So even with the awareness message that we've had for the last few years, we're still concerned that there's adoption that folks need to do for a more diversified program.
You look out towards 2015 and you see how tight margins are going to be for farmers. Is this an area that, you know, people will think about looking at cutting in?
You know, it's possible. I really hope that the herbicide program is not one of those areas where folks look at making big cuts with the lower commodity prices. Kind of the unfortunate reality is water hemp and Palmer amaranth seed banks in the field, those seed banks are there and they have to be managed. And you know, water hemp doesn't really care what commodity prices are out there. That's just kind of an unfortunate reality of that. And paying attention to what rate that we select for our pre-emergence program. There's a lot of good options that farmers have out there. It's more about rate and being real timely with the pre's and post-emergence applications.
So in addition to the resistance problems we already have, there are new varieties of seed coming onto the market that will allow growers to better target some of the resistance issues, but overall, what does that mean for the grower?
Yeah, I think you're talking about enlist soybeans and some of the dicamba-tolerant soybeans that are potentially coming on the market in the next few years out there. And in soybeans for water hemp, it represents a nice tool that folks are going to have to control, or I should say another mode of action that folks are going to have to control problem weeds like water hemp, mare's tail, and some of those. But the thing we really got to keep in mind on that is the same principles for good weed management that we've talked about, strong pre-emergence, still multiple modes of action, are still important even with the new traits.
Now with this week's weather forecast, here's Nebraska Extension State Climatologist Al Dutcher.
Well folks, here we are again for the weekly forecast. Of course, this is the first forecast of 2015, and we've had 2 weeks since our last forecast with the university shutdown. During that time frame, we had 4 precipitation events that moved across the region, bringing various amounts of snow to our state. A lot of it was with wind. Heavier snowfall was reported across portions of western and northern Nebraska, but everybody did enjoy a little bit of snowfall. Now, in terms of Christmas Day, the official categorization of a white Christmas is 1 inch of snowfall on the ground. Even though we did have a semblance of a trace to 1 inch in many locations, a lot of the state did not qualify for a true white Christmas, even though we did have snowfall on the ground. So, you know, even though the statistics didn't say we had a white Christmas, with the snowfall that we had, I would quantify it as at least having a semblance of a white Christmas. Now, as we go forward in time, this cold air that we've been dealing with since essentially just past the Christmas Day holidays, and has been bringing very good Arctic air into our region with some very strong high pressure system that did bring some record high pressures to parts of Nebraska, Iowa, and points to our north. That has eased up, and we'll see another secondary surge this weekend. And then we are going to see a nice gradual warming trend that may last for at least 7 to 10 days. So let's take a look at the upper air models and see what we got in store. Here's that trough that's going to bring a second reinforcing shot of cold air later this weekend. It's going to start to make its way southward, but for today, We are looking for highs that are going to approach the 30 to 32 degree mark across northern Nebraska and far southwestern Nebraska. I think we're going to get up into the low 40s. And then as we go into tomorrow, the cold air from this upper air trough starts to push southward, and that may generate some flurry activity across eastern Nebraska and possibly some snowfall accumulations across western Nebraska. And I think this will probably occur on Monday, but there may be some flurries starting to develop in advance of this front. Coldest temperatures are likely across northern Nebraska early in the day, with them falling consistently throughout the day. The cold front will reach southern Nebraska during the mid to afternoon hours, and so we'll start to see our temperatures bottoming out after that. And that will bring in some very cold conditions on Monday. We'll be looking at this Arctic air piling up against the Rocky Mountains, and that may generate up to 1/10 of an inch of precipitation for the Panhandle, which would equate to 1 to 2 inches. But further east, it looks like we're going to see nothing more than flurries, but very cold temperatures as we return back to highs in the upper teens to low 20s. And as we get into Tuesday, there may be some residual flurries left in central and western Nebraska during the early morning hours, but most of that will push toward the south, and we'll start to see warm air try to make its way in. So we're going to jump about 2 to 3 degrees on temperatures. We'll be looking at the low 20s, but by Wednesday, we start to see warm air really build in as this high pressure ridge takes hold, and that high pressure ridge will continue to push eastward on Thursday, and by Friday, it will encompass much of the southern and northern plains with a piece of energy moving out across the southern stream. So as we look at our temperature forecast, most of the precipitation will occur this weekend. A little cool on Monday, nice warm up to the end of the week. As we look at the 8 to 14 day forecast, warm air takes hold, and of course with that we start to see an increase in precipitation with the storms coming into California.
Thanks, Al. Today's interviews can be found on the Market Journal website and through the Market Journal mobile app. They include information about corn and soybean markets, hog profits in 2015, preparing for calving, and controlling water hemp. As always, you can keep up with Market Journal during the week by following us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Next week, Jeff Peterson will analyze the USDA's January crop report, and we'll discuss GMOs in food. Until then, thanks for watching. I'm Jeff Wilkerson. We'll see you next week.
Join Market Journal online at marketjournal.unl.edu. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Promotional support is provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine. Funding for Market Journal is provided by the Nebraska Soybean Board and the Nebraska Corn Board. Market Journal is produced by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources. Funding for Market Journal is provided by the Nebraska Corn Board and the Nebraska Soybean Board.
Whether it's spring planting, fall harvesting, or just a drive across the state, soy biodiesel helps a diesel-powered engine operate in a demanding job. Soybean oil from Nebraska soybeans makes biodiesel a renewable fuel that's also environmentally responsible. The soybean checkoff plays a major role in supporting the use and availability of biodiesel. The Nebraska Soybean Board, growing opportunity from the ground up.